I mean, you would, with a local based business, let's say my town that I'm in, we're about 160,000 people that live in my city. You would struggle to spend that in ad spend. Like with Google and Facebook, you could try, and you probably could spend all of it actually, but effectively and with, where the peak return on the ROI, it's probably, you probably get to about 2,500 at most if you're on Google heavily, or if you're on Facebook heavily, if you're on Instagram, if you're doing TikTok, doing all the different things. And that would pretty much allow you to probably communicate almost daily with 80 to 85% of your community. Know enough to just ask some questions where your gut will tell you this guy's full of it, right?
Exactly.
Know enough about whatever you like. If you're purchasing goods from a supplier, know enough about the purchasing of the goods or the supply. You don't need to know everything, but just know enough where you could, something just doesn't smell right here. I'm going to move on to somebody else. And you don't even need to dig into why you feel that way. If you feel that way, trust it, that your BS meter is actually signaling, and that's all you need to know, and move on to another. What is really great about the world that we live in is there's very few things that we need as small business owners.
Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today.
Hello and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Andy Seeley, and he is the CEO and founder of Creatively Disruptive. He told me I'd fumble on that. Creatively Disruptive. I think that it's just a tongue twister anyway. So
Yep.
awesome. Thank you for being here today, Andy, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. You have a great experience. You bought a few companies of your own in the past, and you really help people, do great marketing, grow, and scale. So this is going to be more of a conversation about growth and scale, and with the idea of making sure you do that, towards an exit mindset, so that you have something that somebody wants to buy. So let's
Absolutely.
we always start off with the general kind of your background story. What got you into this space? It looks like you came from New Zealand. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So originally come from New Zealand in 1999. As I came here actually coaching rugby, believe it or not, and I met a girl, and just
Always a girl.
still married to her to this day. Met a girl, a gymnastics coach, funnily enough, a beautiful gymnastics coach, and she convinced me that maybe I should stick around. I was originally going to go off to the United States, sorry, go off to the UK,
Mm-hmm.
uh, finish up there. I was supposed to be here for 6 months, and 26 years later, I'm still here. So that's what got me here. And then obviously, rugby coaching doesn't pay huge money in the United States. So I had to get a real job. And my first real job, well, my first job was working as a delivery guy for a pizza restaurant. And that was really cool. To this day, Ronald, that's probably my favorite job that I've ever had is running around this beautiful little town in the western suburbs of Chicago, dropping off pizza to people. I have very fond memories listening to baseball games in the summer as I'm driving around dropping pizza off for some reason. Anyway, so I did that, and then I got a real job, which was working for CarMax Auto Superstores. I got a
Mm-hmm.
job there as their business manager, their store business manager. Then I got quickly promoted to sales manager, and I opened up stores across the country for about 5 years. My wife was then decided that she wanted to own her own business, and she, being a gymnastics coach, that was going to be a gymnastics gym. So
Yep.
we actually, the first business that I ever acquired was a gymnastics gym in Lake Tahoe, funny enough. And we bought that gym in 2003, I want to say, and we had it through to about 2014 where we sold it. We sold it for a little bit more than what we purchased it for, but with inflation and everything, it probably was a loss. And we bought it mainly because we just wanted to get out. We did what a lot of people do when they're trying to get out of a business. We sold it when we were just desperate to get out, which probably wasn't the right thing to do.
Right.
And I did actually. The funny thing is just before, and you know where this is going to go, just before the Great Recession, we actually had an offer to purchase the gym, which was like 3 times as much as we ultimately sold it for, because the gym was doing well. And but because we didn't want to sell it, we were all funny about it, and we got it, and we kind of peed off the guy who offered, and we should have taken that, and that would
Mm-hmm.
have been a great move, because then the next year everything crashed and things became difficult. So we did that. During that period and all the difficulties through the Great Recession, I really felt alone and felt troubled as to how to get through. And there was not a lot of people out there helping. The internet was kind of still somewhat just percolating along. There wasn't that. YouTube had only been in existence in 2009 for about 4 years. Facebook wasn't even really a thing that anyone used. Instagram didn't really exist. Twitter wasn't a thing. There was no social media really. There was no way to try to even really figure out, how do I reach someone, right? If I wanted to get some advice from a business expert like yourself, there's no way that I'd be able to find you, right? Unless I was going to a local business organization or something, right? So that really bothered me, and it kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. And then my business partner was going through a similar thing in New Zealand. My business partner is actually based in New Zealand, and he was going through a similar kind of story. It was different, but very similar, the themes. And in 2015, we decided to, I actually, during that time that my wife had the gym,
Mm-hmm.
I was a sales director for a television station. I'd always been in sales and marketing, right?
Right.
And my business partner got in touch with me and said, this is 2014, 2015, said, hey, why don't we get together and we'll start a marketing company? I'm really good at building websites and you're a good sales guy. And I was like, all right, well, let's look into this. And we did it. We launched it, and we were just doing website builds, right? And my business partner is a very good optimization website builder. He's very good at building sites that actually convert. But we didn't really think much about how to get traffic to sites, which is really the holy grail, right?
Right.
Good traffic to see you is also is as important as a good website. If you have a great website but no one's going to it, it's useless, right? Vice versa, if you have really good traffic going to a really bad website, it's kind of useless too. So being able to learn to do both things, we started on that. And what we decided we wanted to base everything that we did, Ronald, was we wanted to be that company that you think of when you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. in the morning as a small business owner, wondering, how am I going to get through the day? How am I going to get payroll paid? How am I going to pay my lease? Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out about all this stuff. We wanted to be the guys that you go, okay, I'm going to go to sleep, and at 9 o'clock, I'm going to call Andy and Creatively Disruptive, and we're going to get to work to solve this problem. I wanted to be what I didn't have when I owned the business, my first business.
Right.
I wanted to be an outlet for my clients to be able to go, I've got a whole team of people that are working with 80, 90, well, right now it's 110 other businesses somewhat similar to me with hopes and dreams and so forth. They probably know something about how to maybe try to tackle this. And if they don't, they might have some ideas, and at least somebody that I can talk to try to walk through this. So our business was kind of formed with those failures of our past and those difficulties in our past to try to help offset small business owners. And I think, that's probably why we've gone from success to success over the last 10 years. I mean, we're a I hesitate to call ourselves a digital marketing agency, because I feel like we're much more than that. We do a lot of consulting. We've got consulting clients. None of our clients are just getting ads made for them. I mean, all of them, we're going through their financials. We're looking at what they really truly want, because people come oftentimes and they say, I want to make an extra 50,000 a year. Well, what does that mean? You personally, your business, profit, revenue, why 50? Why not 100? Why not 25? Well, let's walk through this and actually get some real numbers that mean something. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff to actually walk through to really find out where people are at. So I think what we are is a revenue growth and profit sustaining agency, if there is even a thing called that, because
Right.
that is really where we're at. Because what we do know is most of our clients stay with us. If we have a client and they join, if they stay for more than 4 months, they stay with us for years. The first client that we ever had is still with us today, which is quite something in our industry. And the reason for that is because of our focus on helping make them profitable. Not just how do we make some ads that get some people to their website, how do we make you profitable? And sometimes it's a battle up front, right? And the reason why we get a higher turnover in the first 4 months than what we do once we get past that first 4 months is there's this wrestling match between us and our new client with trying to change some of their ways, right? You've heard of Caesar, the dog whisperer, right? And
Yep.
have you heard of him? You know how he kind of almost always says it's not the dog, it's you. Like the failures that most business owners see and the difficulties that they have are usually self-imposed,
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely. Yep.
So, and usually when they come to us going, I need this and I need that, and all these people have failed me, and I need this and I need that, and we kind of walk through with them that, hey, look, let's dig into what these past failures, what has caused it. Let's find out what's going on. We will show you what you should be doing based on 110 other clients, and we've had more clients than that. The learnings that we've had over the last 10 years. And then there's some people and there's some clients that and even the ones that are successful and have been with us for years, at the beginning there's always a little bit of a wrestling match. And usually if you work with us past the 4 month period, we won the wrestling match, and you kind of submitted, and they've gone, okay, let's listen to what you guys have to say. The ones that leave, usually we haven't been able to get them to submit, and we haven't been able to get them to realize that maybe there's some things that they can do better. Because one thing I really am very passionate about is that profitability number, right? Not so much the revenue number. That old adage, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity,
Oh
right?
yeah, definitely. Yep.
Um, I really do focus on that, and part of that is making sure that as a small business owner, you're not constantly thinking about you know the vanity metrics, like how many leads am I getting, how much revenue that I have, whatever that number is. You want to be looking at what that profit number is. What do you get out of these efforts that we put in? And some of that means that as a small business owner, every penny that you're spending needs to be spent correctly, because oftentimes what our clients pay to work with us is more than they spend on their ads, right? And so we've got to make sure that we're getting as much out of that as we possibly can, which means there's certain things that we need to do to squeeze every penny out of it. And sometimes there's that wrestling match. Even if a client comes and they say, do whatever you want to do, there's sometimes a bit of a wrestling match with the platforms. There's sometimes a little there in that first couple of months. So we're really, really concerned about how much somebody's spending on their advertising, what they're getting back for it, and why they're doing it. And if we get on top of all of those things, typically things go into a really good spot. So that's my very long-winded. I mean, the original question was, how did you get into this? But that's basically my long-winded answer. And in a nutshell, if I just use a simple sentence, it's, we got into this because small business owners have a time and place right now where they can do things that they've never been able to do. Right, your grandparents' small business, you can't do the things that you can do today.
Yeah.
Sorry, you couldn't do what you can do today. And I truly believe small businesses are kind of like the rock that our communities are based on. And I really have a desire to support those people, because I think communities, people, villages, towns, they deserve a little bit more support than I feel that sometimes we see out there, if that makes sense.
I agree. You know, It's interesting what you were talking about there. The concept that business owners, they want 50,000 more, a month or a year or whatever. Often, in case, like looking at all these business owners, often is the case they could just save that by how they're spending money. I don't know how many. I probably looked at, probably better than 300, but probably closer to 400 or 500 businesses in the last 5 or 6 years, and almost every one of them that has some marketing going on is overspending on one key area, and that's the website maintenance. Most of these guys, if they're not running e-commerce whatsoever, if they're just like a brick and mortar company or something like that, and they don't have an e-com arm on their thing, most of the time they probably should. But the second thing is they have some web developer that built their website and custom built it, and then they're paying them something like $2,000 to $6,000 a month in maintenance fees. And like, okay, I can take that, I can make your website look exactly the way it is, and and within a day or two, worth of work, and a couple $100, have somebody take a WordPress template, make it look exactly the way it is now, and then somebody on your staff can edit it on their normally hourly wage, right?
Yeah.
And you just save, that one I just looked at 2 weeks ago, paying $5,000 a month for website maintenance and updates, and they don't have any
I,
e-com.
yeah, I think what tends to happen is you get a lot of small businesses are usually technicians, right? So
Yep.
what do I mean by that? So you let's talk about a bakery, right? So you might be a bakery. My favorite bakery where I live is called Boyer's Bakery. It's a family run bakery. The dad that owns that bakery, he is a baker. He's not a businessman. He
Right.
is an amazing baker.
Yep.
Um, and what ends up happening is because they're technicians, because you're a baker, the stuff that you're unsure of or not don't know about, you tend to kind of like look for somebody that does, and somebody sounds like they know what they're talking about, and you kind of go, okay, here we go. Let me just give it to you. The reality is no part of your business should ever be let me give anything to you, but you can bring people in as part of your team to help you with it. And I think I don't know. I find it hard to believe. You're telling me that, and I'm like, oh my god! Anybody that ever is telling you that they're spending that kind of money on their website, please send them my way, because we actually build websites for people for free. Like if a client needs a website, we just rebuild it for free, because exactly what you said. It's actually pretty simple to put together a very easy non-ecom, because it's basically a glorified landing page, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And what you're trying to do is that website should only be built to get people to reach out to you, right? Either to walk through your business if you're a brick and mortar, or to call you if you're a service-based business. And that's not a hard thing to do, and it should not cost $2,000. I with that person, I mean, you would, with a local based business, let's say my town that I'm in, we're about 160,000 people that live in my city. You would struggle to spend that in ad spend. Like with Google and Facebook, you could try, and you probably could spend all of it actually, but effectively, and with where the peak return on the ROI, it's you probably get to about 2,500 at most if you're on Google heavily, or if you're on Facebook heavily, if you're on Instagram, if you're doing TikTok, doing all the different things, and that would pretty much allow you to probably communicate almost daily with 80 to 85% of your community, and you'd be struggling to spend. And that's where I would, if somebody was absolutely desperate to spend $3,000 a month on local advertising, that's kind of where I would suggest that they go. But the majority of our clients are spending between 800 and say 1,500 on local ads. And some of those that are spending 800, we're doing a lot of other things which are non-paid. We've never been in a spot where a local business, a small ma and pa, can reach exactly the right people as often as they want, with the regularity and with the low cost that we can today, done
Yeah,
right,
it's insane.
right?
It's like everything's changing. I haven't written code in, well, the last 4 weeks I've been writing a lot of code, but 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I would tell you I haven't written a line of code in 10 years, and I haven't written code on a regular basis, software or even like scripting languages, in 15, 20 years. in the last 4 weeks, I've written over 27,000 lines of code on an app that
Well,
at a hobby app that I thought people needed and I wanted to build out, and it's AI based, and it's like and that's just using AI assisted software writing tools. And that's a horrible way to measure code, by the way. But it's just lines of code could be totally inefficient code, but it's just one of those. That just seems what I was wondering, how big is this getting? Because I'm using AI to help me write it, and I actually did a line count on it. Just told it to do a line count. It was like 27,000 lines. Holy cow! Right? I knew it. Knew it was complex, but I just didn't realize in 4 weeks, that I was able to do something like that single handedly. I don't have anybody else helping me.
right.
So
And that's just like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that would be magic. People would be like, what? What did you
yeah,
just
that'd
do?
be 10 people in 6 months. I've written, I've created, I've done startups. I've created companies. I actually
Right.
started and launched a couple different websites over the time. Some of them featured in the news and everything. I'm not going to get into that, but I've created those before, and then usually it's 10 engineers, 6 months minimum projects, maybe 8 months to 12 months, and test and retest and bug, and you have test engineers testing QA. What all I do for now is QA is if I get something I don't like how it works, I take the source code and I give it to a different AI and say, review this and tell me what you think. And it'll say, oh,
Right.
you should probably do this for security and stuff. And then
Right.
I'm playing them against each other, and it's coming out really great. But
And
you can
that,
do that with web development or anything now.
right. And I think with the technicians that are out there, we've got everything from in the local small business realm, from kids activity centers. A lot of our clients are kids activity centers. That's dance schools, swim schools, gymnastics gyms, that kind of stuff. But we also have home renovation companies. We've had banks that have worked with us, local banks and so forth, and lawn care and all of that kind of stuff. So anything local. That's service is probably more so, because retail outlets are sometimes difficult, although we do have a number of restaurants that we work with as well. But you know as you said, I mean, not everybody, in fact I would say a very few amount of people, Ronald, are going to do what you did and attempt to build their own, and write their own code. But I think the point that you're making is we do live in a day where it's possible that a baker with a little bit of interest in technology could write code for an app, which
Oh
is
yeah.
just crazy towns, right?
Yeah, they have all these websites. I'm using one of them. They have all these websites out there. They're called no code. I disagree with that terminology because even though they're no code, they're also not perfectly efficient. So you have to have some coding background in my mind. Where it's at currently today, I still think you have to have a coding background enough to have a BS meter and go, wait a second, that doesn't play right. Hey, there's a security issue with this one. So like I haven't
Can I
sitting down. To be honest, I don't think I've sitting down and typed. I might have fixed a few things, but I haven't written any of the code on this thing. I just keep telling prompts to do it, and but I can read code really easily. I can read almost any of the languages because they're all structured the same, and I
you
can read through it and I can see what it's doing. And that's not what I asked it to do. So
right
that's where
you
somebody
said,
who's non-technical couldn't do that.
you just said something that is extremely wise, but is kind of sounds, I think you were trying to say, you were saying kind of what I'm about to say, but I think it's really important to kind of pick on something you said. You said you've got to have a BS meter
Absolutely,
for code, right?
for
But the
AI at
reality is,
all AI
me,
for any of it.
but I'm talking, I think as a business owner,
Hmm.
small business owner, any business owner, what I see as a really good tool for you to slowly build up is a really good BS meter on a wide range of topics, right? If you're talking about marketing, if you're talking about working with a company like mine, know enough to just ask some questions where your gut will tell you this guy's full of it, right?
Exactly.
Know enough about whatever you like. If you're purchasing goods from a supplier, know enough about the purchasing of the goods or the supply. You don't need to know everything, but just know enough where you could, something just doesn't smell right here. I'm going to move on to somebody else. And you don't even need to dig into why you feel that way. If you feel that way, trust it that your BS meter is actually signaling, and that's all you need to know, and move on to another. What is really great about the world that we live in is there's very few things that we need as small business owners that there isn't 1,000 people supplying it, right? The problem with that is that of the 1,000 people supplying whatever you need, 990 of them might be full of shit, right?
Right.
So building up your BS meter getting a sense of, is this the right person for me as well? Like, I think I'm very trustworthy. I think we know what we're talking about. We really care deeply about small business owners, but I'm also totally aware that I might not be the right fit for everybody as well, right? So even when you find somebody that is a good, that is good at what they do, it's important for you, especially if you're going to work with them for a long period of time. Which, if you're getting into a relationship with a marketing agency or a marketing firm, you got to treat it like you're hiring an employee. It just happens to come with 20 people. Treat it like you're hiring an employee, which means you're not going to try it for 1 month or 2 months and then just ditch it when it's not quite there. You're going to work through it and get to where it needs to be. But to make sure you're not wasting that 2 to 3 months of getting it where it needs to be, you've got to feel good and be able to just sniff test that BS meter thing. So I know you were talking about coding, but the reality is, it's across, as a small business owner, probably my biggest strength, I think, is I've got a pretty decent BS meter, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know about, right?
Right.
There's a lot of things I can go, that kind of makes sense to me, or that makes no sense to me. And I don't necessarily get all up on people or tell them that they're full of shit or whatever. I just thank you very much for your time, Ronald. I'll get back to you when I'm interested. And you just never hear from me again, right? And I think
Right.
that's a real amazing skill that I think, for a successful business owner, you should really kind of work on doing. And I'm reading stuff. I'm always on YouTube. Probably I'm on YouTube probably 2 or 3 hours a day. Probably, like, if I think about it, when I get up in the morning, I've got YouTube going. I'm brushing my teeth and stuff, listening to something. I'll watch something. I'll listen to something. I'm always trying to find different things to find out enough to give me enough information to go, does this sound right? Yeah, I don't need to be the expert on it, but as a decision maker in my business, I've got to know enough to be able to just sense, is Ronald full of it, or is he the answer to all my prayers? You know what I
Right.
mean?
I do the same thing. I actually constantly seek knowledge. Probably have more college degrees than the average fool should have. That said, I thought I was going to be a college professor, so I went to got multiple stuff there. But this goes for all of my guys out there listening. You're thinking about buying or selling a business too. Have a BS meter when you're buying. Have a BS meter when you're selling. Learn enough about the brokerage process to ask the broker enough questions. Do you know whether or not they're going to actively market and do more than just charge you a fee and throw your listing up on Biz Buy Sell and hope it sells, right?
Right.
They're gonna work with you and get your numbers right. They're gonna do all the different stuff. But you got to learn these different realms before you hire anybody. Learn enough. It's so easy these days with all the different AI tools. You can literally give AI any subject in the world and say, "Hey, I need to develop a BS meter, and here's what I'm trying to hire somebody for. What are the critical things I should look for?" And it'll teach you, right?
Yep.
There's models out there if you like to listen. There's models out there you can give notebook.lm or notebook LM, I think is what it's called. You can give it 300 source files and PDFs, and it'll produce a 15 to 20-minute podcast where two individuals that are AI generated that sound real, and you can hear them sigh and breathe and laugh in the middle of it, everything, are talking about your subject you put in there. And it's a heck of a way to learn something quick, right? I had a
Right.
buddy trying to get me into crypto not too long ago, and I was like, I don't know anything about this space. So I found a bunch of PDFs and places that are teaching about it and ebooks and stuff I can throw into that and listen to a 25 or 30 minute, self-produced that I put together inside of there, listen to it and talked about it, and
Right.
learned quite a bit about the space.
I think what you're saying there is really interesting when it comes to tools to actually build your BS meter. Is I use ChatGPT a lot, and I know people are like, oh, ChatGPT. No, you know what? ChatGPT is really good if you do it right. And I've been training my ChatGPT. My ChatGPT is an English woman named Jane, who comes from a town called Plaxtall in Kent, England, which happens to be where my dad was born. Because I said to my dad, we can do a background for my ChatGPT, and
Yep.
he was like, oh, well, that's great. I was like, what do you think it should be? So he basically gave it his background, but it happens to be an English woman named Jane. Anyway, Jane has been taught over the last year everything about my business. And this might be a scary thing for some, but I'm like, who cares? I'm just going to embrace it and see
Right.
what happens. what's the worst that can happen? But we'll see, because I'm literally giving loads of knowledge and lots of information that I have about my business, to the point that I can go on there and say, make me a bio. And it makes me a bio, and it covers everything. It knows that I've got kids, knows I've got my wife, knows what I'm interested in, blah, 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 because I've been teaching it. I'm writing a book on it. It's getting all that information. I give it my thoughts. One of the things that I love about it from a learning standpoint is that you can talk to it, on your app. There's that little, you just hold down the button and it will have a conversation with you like you're talking to a person, and it will have a verbal conversation, but then it will write it all down.
Yep.
And I can actually talk about, hey, what's the best way to do this? What do you recommend this? And then it will start talking about it, and I can interrupt and say, well, hey, what did you just say there? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And it will start talking. And it's literally like having a conversation with a knowledgeable expert. What I love about what I've been able to develop with ChatGPT is it's not just a knowledgeable expert based on all the information on the internet, but it also is a knowledgeable expert on me and what's important to me and what I'm trying to get done. So when I'm talking to it to try to find out stuff, it comes up with some really interesting stuff. Now, I've also been able to build a little bit of a chat GPT bullshit
It'll
sniffer,
hallucinate. Yep.
because sometimes it gets stuff, because a lot of the information it's getting is off the internet. So sometimes, the internet is not always correct, right?
Right.
But that's where you can get in there and say, hey, that doesn't sound right. When you say that, blah, 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 take this. But like anything, the information that you're getting from anywhere, even if you paid $100,000 a year to sit in a college class with a professor talking to you, that professor doesn't know everything either, right? So,
Yep.
but the tools that we have to quickly get to where we need to be is amazing. I love how I can go to a client's website and tell ChatGPT to have a look through the website and give me some thoughts of what's working and what's not. Now, it's pretty elementary, but it gives us something to look at, right? And it gives us something to start with, right? We can say, hey, there's this or there's that. Give us some thoughts on this. Give us some thoughts on that. There's multiple different AIs when it comes to copywriting. Where you can write all sorts of different copy from, and you can write it in different ways. You can write it technically, you can write it expressively, you could write it from a sales standpoint, humor. You can write it with all sorts of different, who is the audience that's listening, and it will tailor it to that audience. Like you said, there's AI where you can generate podcasts. There's AI that you can generate photos and video. There's pretty much the gamut, right?
Yep.
And it's a little bit complicated and it's a little bit overwhelming, if I'm honest. And that's where building teammates, because one of my big things, and that I really truly believe in, is this thing called business is a team sport. Anybody that thinks they're going to win it by themselves is a fool. That when you want to buy a business, I don't suggest that you just do it by yourself with
Right.
no expert assistance. Hire someone like yourself to maybe give some, if I'm buying it or selling it or whatever, maybe I should have somebody in my court that's done it a few times. I always think of Usain Bolt, right? He was a 100-meter sprinter, right? World's fastest man for a long period of time. You could look at him and go, he's by himself. It's an individual sport. No, he probably had 30 guys in his team behind him, his coaches, his medical team, his family, his mental support. All of these different people helped create this fastest man that won gold medals, right? I'm a huge believer in that. I have a team of 23 people, and I have a team outside of my direct employee team. I also have mentors, friends, people that I go to who help me make sure I'm making good decisions. Some I pay, some people I pay to get consultancy. Some people I partner up with to do different things, but very rarely do I do anything solo. And I think there are a lot of people out there that try to do things solo, and they get themselves into a little bit of a pickle.
I'll tell you something I've done recently, just playing around, and I have a board on ChatGPT. So it's in a project, and I've trained it on. I've given it profiles for a chief operating officer,
Yep.
detailed profile. Here's the job description. Here's what I expect out of them. Here is two great PDF books on what it means to be a chief operating officer, and then I'd say, okay, you're that, and then I'd go to another one. So you're the product manager, right? Here's my minimum viable product. Here's my requirements documents. Here's the stuff. So a lot of times I check in with those. I have this little mini board meeting in ChatGPT, and I say, I'm wanting feedback from this profile, and it remembers all of it, and it'll tell you, it's kind of like having a mini board meeting. You can put anybody
Yep.
in there, right?
It's amazing.
I got
Right.
it from the book Think and Grow Rich, where you said you used to have mental board meetings with all these expert people. So I do it inside of ChatGPT. Now I still reach out to humans and humans where I needed, but until something's revenue generating and you can afford it, now I can just go out and get used to you'd have to figure this out on your own until you got enough
And it's
thing,
getting
or write big checks, right?
and it's getting better every day. Every
Oh,
day.
it's
Like every
insane.
month it's like my chat GPT today, what it was a year ago is a total different beast at this point.
Absolutely.
And it's changing so quickly. And yeah, I highly agree. And that all comes down to helping you not necessarily be the expert on everything, but build that BS meter to build to so you can get into things. You can as the CEO of a company, like yeah, and that's the other thing. A lot of businesses, they kind of not run like companies, they run like jobs.
Hmm.
And those companies are really hard to sell, right? So you as somebody who buys companies, and I bought just in the last 2 years, I bought two companies. I'm way less attracted and way less willing to spend much money if it's really this was a job that somebody was doing and they just don't want to do that job anymore and they have some clients. That's not a very attractive business to me. And a lot of people behave like with their business like it's a job that they do, not as a CEO. And I when I'm consulting with people and I'm like, look, you have your technician part of you that you need to do because hey, you're the baker, but you own a business and there's a CEO part of that role that you must not let go of, because that CEO part is something that only you can do. Someone else can actually bake the goods, but you are the only one that can look out of the window of your business and decide where you're headed, right? I did the analogy yesterday with a consulting client that I have, that I then mentor, and I said to him, "Your problem right now is you're looking internally totally, and there's no looking out. So think of it this way: right now, you're in a beautiful car, and you're constantly looking in the wheel, in the passenger seat, in the center console, in the back seat, at the dashboard, in the glove box, looking downstairs. You're looking at all these things, but you're never looking out of the front window. You're not looking down the road. You don't know where you're going. You have no goals. You don't know what you're trying to accomplish. This car can't safely move anywhere. This business can't safely do anything until you stop 100% of the time looking inside, right? It's important to look inside to make sure things are operating correctly. But if you're not looking out of the window and down the road and where your future is going to be and what you're trying to create, you are going to have a problem. And you will, it's a little bit like a boat that the captain's spending most of the time pulling up the sails and not enough time looking at maps and figuring out where to sail the boat,
Right.
right? The boat will never get to where you want to be. And that's one of the reasons why, as a company ourselves, if you were to come on board with us, Ronald, our first thing that we do in the first month is we do a thing called a 12-quarter plan. So it's a 3-year plan. And we say to you, where do you want to be in 3 years' time? Many, many times people are quite low on their expectations. Like we have to say, lift your expectations a little bit higher. It's not unreasonable for you, if you're making $200,000 of total revenue in a small business, to actually turn that $200,000 in total revenue into $200,000 in bottom line, right? So you might be doing $1 million of revenue. So that's 5 timesing yourself in 3 years' time. That's not unreasonable or unusual that can be done. Oftentimes it's people's lack of confidence that they can actually do that stuff. But once you start breaking that down into 12 quarters, and you do quarters, not months, because quarters are a larger thing that takes into account variables and so forth that you can look through and you can fit. And what we almost always say, and this kind of brings back to a little bit more about what many of the people that might be watching this might be thinking, is it brings that 3-year period, allows you to go, if I wanted to leave this business in 3 years' time, if I wanted to sell this business in 3 years' time, what do I need this business to look like? What do I want to sell it for? Right? So don't be the guy that gets in touch with Ronald when you want to sell your business. The week prior, you weren't thinking about selling it. The best thing for Ronald is that you've been preparing for this moment for the last 3 years. You've got it to a point where there's a lot of good things happening, and Ronald can look at it and maybe he can give you some adjustments, some ideas of how to like put the cherry on top. But you've got a lot of the way there, because what is it that buyers want to see, Ronald? Maybe 3 years of revenue, 3
3 years of
years of
revenue, 3 years of your tax returns, and a stable, well-ran company. Right?
right,
It's not dependent on any one key person. There's a whole list of things we're looking for.
and a
Right?
profit trajectory, right?
Yeah, like you're
Not a
growing.
not a not a not a profit dejectory.
I personally don't do turnarounds. There are a lot of people who do.
Yeah,
I always think I checked my ego a long time ago and realized that I think it's a little naive to think I'm going to come in and buy a company that somebody else has been running for 30 years, and then day one I'm going to run it better than you. I think even with all my education and all my experience, that's a little naive or a little bit of ego, and there's a little ego in that to think that. So
right.
right now, I'm not really buying much. I help other people buy. I always say I'm semi-retired, but that said, the real trick is for any small business owner is to show that you've got a great business, and what that means is it's growing, it's well run, it doesn't need you, you're not a key player in it anymore, and those things take 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
It does.
And that's why I highly recommend from a growth standpoint. I know we're not getting into the tactical stuff of things,
Right.
but when you as a small business owner is looking, let's give you some tactical things. So let's say how to choose an agency to work with, right? Technology and the platforms are sophisticated, and there's so many of them that it's hard and overwhelming to kind of try to do a really good job by yourself. I can't tell you how many small business owners come to me and say, we don't use Facebook because it doesn't work. Well, no, it doesn't work because what you didn't work. It doesn't work because you don't know how to make it work, right?
Right.
And I don't know a business that can't benefit from working on Meta. I don't know a business. I mean, I know businesses that can't work on Meta because Meta won't allow them to, but I don't know any business that Meta is okay with working with that Meta can't substantially help, right? Done right. So knowing that the new marketplace is 80% of 80 plus percent of your purchases are on Instagram and Facebook every single day. That's just the truth. Those same people are possibly, or especially if they're the younger crowd, are probably on TikTok. There's a group that are probably on Twitter. There's email marketing. There's all these different variables that all work very differently, but they're kind of like when you put them together, they become parts of an engine.
No.
And when you work them together correctly, your website, your social media, your email marketing, your paid social media, your Google ads, your search engine, all of that kind of stuff, if you do it all well and work it together as a harmonious unit, it can actually do some magical stuff. So
I
when
don't.
you're
Go ahead.
sorry, so when you're trying to figure out how do I build that thing, don't try to build it by yourself. You're going to have failure. Like I'm not going to my mechanic and I'm going to say I'm going to build. Well, I'm not going to go downstairs and build my own engine and think that it's going to be the best engine ever. I'm going to get a really great mechanic to build an engine if I need an engine built, right? Or I'm going to go and buy one from somebody. I'm not going to do it myself. It's not my expertise. I shouldn't be doing it. It changes so often as well. So when you're looking to buy to build your team around you, I highly recommend small business owners to look at agencies. But when you're looking at agencies, you got to look for the right one. So you got to look, and I would look at agencies that have more than 5 employees. I would want them to have employees. Not Don't go to an agency that has a bunch of contractors. So ask that question, because that's usually not an agency. That's usually a singular person that is the only person that actually works for the agency, and that's the owner. And then they just contract out. And what that means is that they have all these contractors working for them that have other interests too. They're not really wholly committed to you and the business that they even work for, because they might have several other agencies that they're working for. And then see if that person talks about your business, asks about what you want, asks about what you're trying to get. gets into your numbers, talks about your profit, see if they go down that route. Talk about, where, some of the tools with which they use to kind of get you to where they want to be. And if all the tools are, how I'm just amazing at meta, and they're showing you meta screenshots and stuff, that's not about you. The
I've,
best agencies that I know of really know about you.
I've talked to more than one agency. I've got a marketing background. I've talked to, and one of the first things I did in the merger and acquisition space was a marketing agency roll up. And we
Yep.
spoke to 216 or something marketing agencies in a very short period of time. And so many of them, even some of the bigger ones, you would ask for questions like, well, okay, how do you manage your customer acquisition costs? And they would just go glassy eyed, right? They didn't know the number side of the business. They sold branding, they sold marketing. That's a big pet peeve for me in the small to medium business space is, and I say it all the time. If you're a small business and you're not doing 10, 15, $20 million a year and somebody's selling you a branding campaign and they're not telling you an ROI and how you're going to make your money back, you're
Yep.
getting taken, right? That's a so that's that's there is branding happens and there needs to be consistency. There's an importance around branding, but paying money for ads and putting content out there for the sake of branding and nothing else is absolutely ridiculous if you're really small.
Yeah, if
So
you're a small business owner, I always say, because branding is a component that happens, right?
right.
But it happens because you're getting in front of the right people consistently, and if you do that correctly, you're going to get sales today, and
Hmm.
you're going to get money giving you people giving you money today, right? That's not branding, that's transactions, right? So
Right.
if you've got a good local, especially local business type marketing campaign, it should generate transactions today. Now, over 6 months, over a year, over 18 months, the fact that your impressions might be in a town of 160,000, my impressions might be 400,000 a year, 500,000 a year, meaning I'm reaching 80% of the population in my town 5 or 6 times a year. That's going to start doing the branding side. Now, many of our clients are reaching 400,000. If they're trying to reach all the people in a town, or their audience is 160,000, their impression rate might be 400,000 a month.
Hmm.
That's where the branding comes in, but it's a byproduct of the transactional marketing that you're doing. And that is important, because I think what you were saying, Ronald, which is exactly correct, it's hard to actually look at the numbers and look at metrics and go, okay, what is the branding getting for me for my dollar? And as a small business owner, every penny needs to be accounted for. With transactions, we can account for that a lot easier. I can see, okay, we've got, like, let's say a gymnastics gym. Let's just use. We can see, hey, we got that gymnastics gym 40 leads. They closed 20 of them, 20 new clients. Client is worth $100 a month. Average client stays for 12 months. We got 10 of them, so 12 times, $1,200. We've added on average about $12,000 for that month, right? How much was the lead cost? $20. How many leads? Blah blah blah. This is, so the actual cost of that acquisition was, $400 to get a customer that's worth 1,200. Is that worth doing? Should we continue? Is there things that we need to get better at? The branding part is where, because usually with that kind of business, you're focusing on mums, right? So in a town of 160,000, there might be 40,000, 50,000 mums. You want to be getting 200, 300,000 impressions on those 50,000 mums every month. So they're seeing you 6, 7 times a month, maybe more. And what ends up happening is, over 6 months, 7 months, and they've seen you 50, 60 times, they suddenly say, hey, Ron, you were talking about sending your son to do some activities. Why don't you check out this place? Can't remember where I've heard it, but I've heard some good things. You should go and check it out. That person may not even be a customer of yours, but they've seen the ads. That's the branding part, right? And that's where the branding does start working. And I think there is value in it. But you're absolutely right. I think, especially for the smaller business, like you said, under 15 million, definitely if you're under 2 million, your dollars need to be transactional. Like, I spend $1 and I get $5 back.
In all the years I've been looking at people's numbers, I've seen 2, maybe 3 people that had their stuff that well together, right? Out of 4
Yep.
or 500 businesses, right? And be honest, the I think it's three, and at least 2 of them that I can remember for sure. I think there's a third one. All of them got outbid by me, like, because I'm always looking for the people I'm working for. We're trying to buy multiple things, and we're never going to be the highest bidder, but we're going to be probably going to be the brightest future for them because we're going to grow it and do other stuff and do other acquisitions and add on to it. But that said, as we got bid, the projects I was on got outbid on all those because they were highly sought after. It was a competitive bid structure. People were really wanting those companies because they had the numbers, because they could show us what they're going, and they had the history of numbers. So when somebody leaves, we can look at their history. If you don't have all that documentation, and we
Yep.
go, okay, this is, all businesses are cyclical. Every business in the world has cycles up and down, whether it's throughout the year like seasonal, or it's throughout the market conditions. Like real estate's very cyclical by market conditions, right?
Absolutely.
So if you don't have enough historic data, I don't see how well I can't see how well you handle during those cycles. If you don't think you're cyclical, then I see a red flag I've got to deal with, right?
Yep.
Any business owner says, "Oh, my business isn't cyclical. We're straight through all the time." It's like, okay, he doesn't know long term what's going on because I've never met one. Even bars, right? Bars are good
I
during,
mean, even seasonal, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just there's different times of the year where there's with ups and downs. You're talking about bars. There's different times of the years that bars are busier than other times of the years.
exactly,
Um, you can't just say, "Hey, we're doing really great." Oh, why is that? Oh, like yesterday we did so much money. Yesterday was December 31st,
yeah,
or yesterday was March 17th.
yeah,
You know, you can't make the decision on how well you're doing. What I want to know is how well did March 17th go the year before and the year before that, because then we can say, okay, you're doing well because you're growing. You're more than what you were the last time. And and were the last 3 years actually good years, or were they just poor years? Right? What's going on here? So one of our goals is to have everything data crunched, and because we pull all the stuff and it's all in a spreadsheet and I have my staff do it. The other thing that's good about having a data that data is it can allow to do one of the things that I think you mentioned. You're saying these little bits of absolute wisdom, Ronald, and we're not picking up on it. Ronald a little bit ago said something about one of the important things is not is the business not being attached to you not being important in the business, right? One of the ways to allow your staff to take on more roles in the company is by tracking the data, so they can look at it and they can make decisions, and more so you can look at it and you can ask them questions about, well, what's happening here, what's happening there. They do the stuff, but you act more like the board member rather than the operator. And you can have an operator that's looking at the numbers who's an employee, and then you're pulling yourself out of the company a little bit more. You're training your staff to look at what's important and what's going. So when I come along and I'm like interested in buying your business and I'm worried about the day you leave, I'm not so worried about it because nothing much is going to change apart from it's going to be a different person asking the question, which is what I want anyway. Right.
yeah.
So that data and the final thing on that too is you can't improve stuff you don't track, right? You can't improve or you can't manage numbers that you don't track, right? So you want to double your income. You
You'd be
can't double
sorry.
it without tracking it.
You can't because you don't know where you're at and you don't know where you're going. You'd be surprised what you find out when you really start tracking the numbers too. I was talking to a friend of mine. He sold it now, but he used to own a janitorial service down in L.A. area, and before he sold it, I just kept bugging him like, because this is years before I even got into merger and acquisitions. He told me he was going to sell it. I was like, cool. How well are your numbers, right? I've been interested in this space and knowledgeable of it before I got into it, having owned my own businesses and stuff. And we finally got him to sit down. We brought in an accountant for him so he could get it ready for sale. I helped him through this, and it turned out his supplies cost had went up. Like he was spending $3,000 or $4,000 a month on supplies. He had pretty good sized janitorial service. It almost doubled or tripled, off and on between 2 and 3 times at a certain time a couple of years ago, a couple of years prior. I said, did you take on big clients? Well, look at, I see 2 years ago you were only spending this much and you're making as much revenue. You haven't really grown that much. He goes, no, no, no. So he started tracking it down. There were two people he hired during that time frame, and when we tracked it down, one of the persons was taking tons of supplies out, taking it to one of the local flea markets, selling it, right? And like he had all kinds of janitorial supplies set up on this booth, at a market. He figured out what it was, and he was like, "What the hell is he doing with all this stuff?" So he basically went around trying to figure out what he was doing with it, and he figured it out over time. But
He was
if you don't
selling
track
his
your numbers, you don't know. Like, why are my supplies, because
right.
you're still profitable at that, but why are my supplies now, instead of $2,000 or $3,000 a month, $6,000 or $7,000 a month? Something I didn't get any new customers. They're not cleaning extra toilets. Why am I
Right.
burning through, you know, scrub brushes and toilet brushes and all this, not even just the chemicals, just all these, rubber gloves and all this extra stuff, you know.
And and it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a bad employee out there. It could be just inefficiencies creeping in, that people are getting lazy.
Yep.
People aren't pushing stuff. People aren't. Somebody it could. I mean, sometimes I hate to say it. Sometimes it could just be a salesperson that's getting tired and probably stale, and maybe needs to be moved on. I mean, no one likes to think of that, but sometimes that happens. Good person, they've been working for you for 5 years, but there is some people have expiry dates when it
Right.
comes to their efficiencies. And if you're trying to set yourself up to sell, those are really important markers that you need to look at. And again, like as a marketing agency, I hate to call it that. I'll get back to that revenue growth agency, or revenue growth company. It's really, really important to us that all of our clients have a grasp of their numbers. We try to put all the numbers we can together. I know for some of our clients, we'll try to dig into their how many kids do they have coming, or how many cakes do they sell, or how many kitchens have they got, what is their cost per kitchen, all of that kind of stuff, to try to start getting them a bit of a dashboard together. Because what I see always for us, and this is a very self-serving thing to say, but what I see for us is the better we help our client look at their metrics, the longer they stay with us, because they actually know what's going on rather than get a feeling. I had a client last week that reached out to us, very agitated, very angry, was kind of being borderline abusive to some of my staff members. And I said, okay, we can't have this. I need to talk to him. I sat down with him. We find out that he got a $30,000 tax bill from his county, that the property tax bill that he wasn't expecting. So he was wigging out and being a bit unreasonable and a bit rude to my team, because of this. And he was basically just taking it out on them. But he also was kind of blaming our team and my company for his situation. I'm like, we didn't send you the tax bill. And I said, okay, well, let's work out what does this tax bill mean. And I said, look, I'm almost certain that if you go to the county and you tell them your situation, you'll be able to come up with a payment plan. And let's say you can come up with a payment plan, and it works out to be $2,500 a month for 12 months, whatever the number is from a math standpoint. So $2,500 a month, $2,500 a month for your business. We basically need to get an extra 12 customers. To get those extra 12 customers a month, your close rate currently is 50%. We need to get an extra 24 leads. To get those 24 leads, your current lead cost rate is $20. So we need to spend an extra, $500 a month. Basically, let's just round it up, $500 a month on leads to pay the county $2,500. So really, your cost of this is $500 a month, not $2,500, because based on the numbers and all the data that we have, that's going to get you your 2,500. But the beauty of this is, at the end of the year, once we've finished investing this $500 a month additional spend,
Mm-hmm.
is that you've built your business by that additional 30,000 a month. And that will, sorry, yeah, it would be a month by that point, and you'll actually end up continuing that revenue track once you've already paid that tax bill off.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he went from anger, frustration, because he didn't know his numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't. And the reason why he got snuck up on with his tax bill was because he didn't know his numbers, right?
Right.
To knowing his numbers and being so grateful, I could see he was almost in tears. And that is where we need to be. And quite frankly, and I know we don't have a lot of time left, but quite frankly, if your partners that you're working with, and I don't care who they are, if they're your accountant, if they're your lawyer, if they're whoever you're talking to about the problems that you have, your marketing agency aren't trying to solve your problems the way I just worked through that very simple problem to try to solve your real world situation, you need to look at somebody else to work with, right? Because they are out there.
Awesome. We will need to wrap this up. Let's do this. Give me three we do. It's over an hour here already.
Yep.
Give us three takeaways that if anybody was listening to this, you want them to walk away with. If they don't remember anything else, what would you want people to walk away with after hearing our show today?
All right. So first of all, I really I want you to think about where you want to be in 3 years' time, regardless of whether or not you want to sell your business. I want you to behave like you're going to sell your business in 3 years. In 3 years' time, you can choose to sell it or not. It doesn't matter. But I will tell you right now, you do that, your business will be in a far better place and you'll be making a lot more money. So that's one. So know your numbers and know where you want to be. Because, like I said, if you're looking out the window and if you're not looking out the window and you're looking at your center console, you're going to crash. But if you're looking out the window and you're driving to where you want to be, there's a good chance you'll get there. So know your numbers, know where you want to be. Second of all, build a team around you of experts. Hire the Ronald Skeltons, hire the Andy Seeleys and their knowledge base and their team of people. Because it's not just Ron that you're hiring; it's all the people that Ronald knows. Right?
Absolutely.
All of the people that, and it's the same with me. It's not just Andy you're hiring; it's all of his staff members. It's all of his network. It's everybody. So get these experts. Get a sense of whether or not they're the right people for you. Because just because I might be really good for somebody might not mean I'm good for everybody. And finally, what is the difference that you're making? So this is everything, and we haven't really spoken about this, but what is the grander impact that you're having? What are you trying to accomplish? If you get a really clear sense of why you're in business and what you're trying to do, and you team that up with a really great team to execute that, and you team that up with a really clear vision with numbers and metrics, you are going into magic land. And many businesses do one or two of those things. Very few do all three. And I think if you can do those three things, it's going to take you to a whole new level that you never even realize. And it's absolutely life changing, not just for you, but possibly generations of your family.
Awesome. Awesome. How does people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you?
Best way to probably reach out to us is through our website, if I'm honest with you. Go to creativelydisruptive.com. You'll see a lot of gymnastics and a lot of kids activity stuff. We've got 3 brands, if I'm honest. We've got highlevelthinkers.com, which is much more service based. It's just a brand. It's not actually a company. Sometimes if you got a home remodeler and he goes and sees a whole of gymnast kids, he's probably like, I'm not in the right place. But the reality is the work goes the same way. And then we've got ashworthstrategy.com, which is an e-com brand that we do where all our e-com clients come through. So go to Creatively Disruptive is the actual company. It's who we are. And you can reach out to us and say, hey, I saw you on with Ron. I'd like some more information, see if you can help us. And we can help you with pretty much anything, as long as you're e-com and a local small business. Other businesses, SaaS and different things, we're probably not as good a fit for you. But if you're a local small business owner or an e-com business, we can definitely do some stuff for you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Andy, for being here today. We'll call that a show and hang out for a few minutes.
Awesome.
So don't just jump yet. All right, here we go.